Welcome to Documents to Sleep. Tonight, you are not just listening to a story. You are remembering something ancient, something buried beneath oceans of time. Long before the world you know, before cities, before memory, there was another age. An age erased. The sky still looked the same, endless, blue, infinite, but the eyes that looked up at it were not ours. They belonged to another civilization long vanished. Their bones turned to dust, their history turned to silence. No records, no voices. Just whispers that survived through myth, fragments of dreams left behind in the minds of those who came after. And maybe, a few traces carved deep in the earth, beyond the reach of our history books. Some call it the First World. Others call it the Forgotten Dawn. But tonight, we will call it what it truly was. The world before us. Imagine this. The planet as it was, perhaps hundreds of thousands of years ago. The continents were different, the oceans wilder, the air heavier, charged with electricity. There was life not primitive, not chaotic, but ordered, intelligent, radiant. A civilization that rose not from chaos, but from harmony. They built with purpose, sang with the stars, and understood energies we have only begun to rediscover. They lived in resonance with the world. The hum of the earth beneath their feet was not just noise, it was communication. A language of frequency and light. They knew how to listen to the pulse of the planet, how to draw from its magnetic breath, how to live with the earth rather than on it. We can still find the bones of their architecture, buried beneath miles of sediment. Geometric patterns that defy erosion, monoliths aligned with cosmic precision, and metals fused in ways that modern science struggles to replicate. Yet strangely, the deeper we dig, the more the record disappears. As if something wiped it clean. It is said that one night the sky changed. It began with a hum deep, low, like the resonance of the planet itself shifting out of tune. Then came the lights. At first they were seen as omens, celestial patterns, bright auroras stretching from pole to pole. But they grew stronger, pulsing in waves, illuminating the oceans, turning night into day. The ancients, those who lived in that forgotten age, watched the heavens with awe. They didn't yet know that they were witnessing the beginning of the end. The sky opened. Not in fire, not in thunder, but in silence. A vast stillness spread across the world, so deep that the wind itself seemed to stop. Animals froze, oceans went still, even the pulse of the planet seemed to hesitate as if the earth was holding its breath. And then from the horizon, they came, the visitors. No one knows where they came from. Some say they descended from a fracture in the sky. Others claim they emerged from a doorway of light. But those who witnessed it, or rather, whose stories survived through echo and myth, spoke of beings unlike anything the world had known. They were tall, but not in body, tall in presence. Their forms shimmered, as if they existed halfway between matter and energy. Their eyes held reflections of stars that didn't belong to our sky. They moved without sound, their shapes bending the air around them, leaving trails of light that pulsed like heartbeats. And when they spoke, it wasn't with words. It was vibration. It entered the bones, not the ears. Those who heard it said it felt like standing in front of a storm, overwhelming, yet somehow peaceful. The message was simple and terrible. It is time to begin again. No one remembers how long the event lasted, minutes, hours, or years. To those who survived, time itself lost meaning. Skies filled with white fire that did not burn. Oceans rose in walls and fell back again. Continents shifted, as if rearranged by invisible hands. And then silence. When the light faded, there were no voices left. No cities. No tools. No stories. The world had been reset. Thousands, perhaps millions of years later, Humans would crawl from caves and call themselves the first. They would name mountains, rivers, stars, not knowing that once those names already existed, written in languages now turned to dust. Every myth, every religion, every symbol of creation, the flood, the cleansing, the gods descending, they all echo the same event. The day the sky erased us. But let's go back to the beginning. Not of destruction, but of curiosity. Why would they come? What purpose would drive a civilization advanced enough to traverse the stars to end another? Were we a failed experiment? A branch of creation that grew too wild? Or were we simply in the way of something larger, an interstellar cycle of renewal that we cannot comprehend? The few ancient tablets and oral traditions that survive, from Sumerian to Hopi, from Egyptian to Polynesian, all hint at the same thing: that humanity, or something like it, has lived and perished many times. That the earth resets, and the sky is the hand that resets it. The Sumerians wrote of the Anunnaki, beings who descended from the heavens and made mankind anew. The Hopi spoke of the third world destroyed by fire from the sky. The Dogon people of Mali told of teachers from Sirius who came, warned, and vanished. In every language, every culture, the story repeats. A visitation, a cleansing, a beginning. Maybe they weren't gods. Maybe they weren't demons. Maybe they were gardeners, cosmic custodians ensuring balance across worlds. And maybe we were simply another field in need of replanting. In the silence after the erasure, the planet healed. The oceans cleared. Forests regrew. Species adapted, thrived, evolved. And somewhere deep beneath the surface, the remnants of that old civilization slept, buried in crystal chambers, encoded in the DNA of life that would come after. The visitors had not destroyed life. They had rewritten it, like sculptors wiping away a canvas to begin anew. And so, millions of years later, when we, modern humanity, look up at the stars, perhaps it's not wonder we feel, but recognition. A faint genetic memory whispering, "We've seen that sky before. We've heard that hum." You can still feel it sometimes, in the quiet hours between night and dawn. When the world is still and the air hums faintly. When your skin tingles with electricity for no reason. When your mind drifts toward memories that don't belong to this life. Maybe those aren't dreams. Maybe they are echoes. Fragments of a time before the reset. Before the erasure. They say history repeats itself. But maybe it doesn't. Maybe it reboots. And if that's true, then perhaps even now, the sky is watching again, waiting for the moment when the cycle begins once more. The world we know is built on layers, not just of stone, but of time. Every age leaves its dust, its bones, its ruins. And yet, beneath the familiar story of human history, lies something that doesn't fit. Traces that whisper, "You were not the first." Archaeologists call them anomalies, artifacts that shouldn't exist. Structures that defy known engineering. Geological formations that look too precise, too intentional. They're found buried under miles of sediment. Beneath oceans, in deserts, and in the frozen silence of Antarctica. They are dismissed, debated, forgotten. But to those who listen, really listen, they tell a different story. A story of a civilization that lived, thrived, and vanished before us. Imagine the Sahara, vast and endless. Beneath those dunes, satellites have found rectangular grids perfectly straight, stretching for miles. Not roads, not rivers. Something else. Some believe they are remnants of ancient cities. Buried beneath time itself, erased by sand and memory. And then there are the stones. Colossal monoliths cut with atomic precision. Weighing hundreds of tons, fitted so tightly you can't slide a hair between them. Even today, with all our machines, we struggle to replicate the technique. But the marks are there, clean, deliberate, mathematical. Who carved them? How and why, when no known civilization had the tools, the knowledge, or the reason? In the jungles of South America, deep scans have revealed geometric ruins larger than modern cities, covered by centuries of forest growth. They form perfect spirals and astronomical alignments, patterns that point not to stars we see today, but to constellations as they appeared hundreds of thousands of years ago. As if whoever built them knew the movement of the heavens long before we rediscovered it. It's easy to dismiss this as coincidence, to say erosion, luck, or randomness made these shapes. But there's a feeling you get when you see them. A quiet sense that these weren't the works of chance. They were made with intention. And then there are the myths. The strange consistency between cultures oceans apart. The same story told in different tongues, with different names but the same ending. The gods descended. They taught. They left. The world ended. The Maya spoke of the first people, a race of light and knowledge who angered the gods and were destroyed. The Sumerians told of the Anunnaki, who remade humanity after a great flood. The Greeks remembered Atlantis, a world swallowed by the sea after it defied the heavens. And in the high Himalayas, monks still whisper of Shambhala, a kingdom beneath the mountains, sealed away after a skyborne war. Different cultures, same story, a cycle of birth, brilliance, and erasure. Scientists call this convergence mythology, the idea that similar stories emerge in isolation because they reflect shared human fears. Floods, destruction, renewal. Simple patterns of survival retold over generations. But what if it's more than myth? What if the reason these stories sound the same is because they are the same? Memories of one great event passed down through shattered timelines. If an entire civilization was erased, some echoes would survive carved into stone, buried in DNA, hidden in dreams. Time would distort them, fragment them, until they became myth. But myth is just memory that's learned to breathe. We often imagine extinction as sudden. A meteor, a flood, a burst of fire. But erasure can also be slow. It can be deliberate. A pulse in the atmosphere that wipes memory clean. A recalibration of magnetic fields. A reconfiguration of consciousness itself. What if the visitors, the ones who came from the sky, didn't destroy that ancient civilization? What if they simply reset it? Turn the page of a planetary book. To them, perhaps time isn't linear. It's cyclical. When a species reaches a certain threshold, too much knowledge, too much chaos, the balance shifts, and the cycle begins again. Even today, scientists detect strange layers beneath the crust. Vast cavities, tunnels, and voids that shouldn't exist. Some vibrate differently under seismic waves, as though they were once filled with something that's no longer there. Energy pockets, old reactors, or cities turned to dust. We call them anomalies. But anomalies are just truths that don't fit our narrative. At the bottom of the Pacific, near the Mariana Trench, a series of metallic structures were detected in 2019. Regular, square, and unnaturally uniform. The deep-sea cameras failed before they could be studied. Officially, they were volcanic formations. Unofficially, some researchers claimed they were remnants of something built long before the rise of man. In Antarctica, the ice preserves what time cannot. Radar images show hexagonal shapes under 3 kilometers of frozen silence. Scientists call them rock formations, but some of the patterns form straight lines, like walls, like cities. And in 2023, one expedition reported something stranger still. A signal, A repeating pulse, not seismic, not magnetic. A frequency, rhythmic and constant, as if something beneath the ice was still alive. The data was sealed. The team disbanded. Officially, it was an instrumental malfunction. Unofficially, it was called the heartbeat of the Earth. If the visitors erased the world once, could they have left something behind? A seed, perhaps, a reminder of what was lost. Maybe that pulse is not warning, but memory, a rhythm repeating through time, waiting for us to remember the song. We often talk about evolution as progress, as if time only moves forward. But what if evolution is restoration? What if we are not the first, but the echo, a reflection of those who came before, reborn into flesh and forgetting? It would explain so much. Our inexplicable bursts of genius, our obsession with the stars, our yearning for the infinite, instincts not learned but remembered. Some believe the proof is in us. Hidden in our DNA are strands that don't match known evolution. Segments with unknown origin. Scientists call them orphan genes. They appear suddenly in the human genome, unlike anything found in our primate relatives. Where did they come from? Mutation or insertion? It's almost as if, at some point, something or someone rewrote us, the same way the Earth was rewritten. Maybe that's what the visitors did. They didn't just erase the world. They rewired it. They embedded fragments of their own code, their own consciousness, so that when life rose again, a piece of them would rise with it. And now we call it intuition. We call it imagination. We call it soul. But maybe it's memory, the faint glowing residue of those who came before. When the wind moves through ruins older than time, when the stars shift above ancient temples, when your skin tingles at a sound you can't quite hear, you are feeling the residue of that forgotten age, the hum of the old world, still vibrating faintly beneath the new one. Maybe that's what dreams are. Crossroads between timelines, moments when the veil between cycles thins. Sometimes, when we dream of places we've never seen, faces we've never met, cities that feel like home, perhaps we're remembering the world before the erasure. And perhaps, somewhere, it's remembering us. The Earth forgets nothing. We do. But the ground beneath your feet still holds every footprint, every vibration, every word ever spoken. The soil beneath your house has heard every prayer, every scream, every silence. It listens still. The question is not whether the forgotten civilization existed. The question is whether we are ready to remember it. Because remembering means acknowledging the cycle. And if the cycle is real, if the sky truly resets the Earth, then perhaps one day soon, the hum will return, the air will grow still, the sky will open, and the visitors will come again. But this time, maybe they won't erase us. Maybe they'll ask if we finally understand, before the erasure, before the hum in the sky and the silence that followed. There was an age unlike any other. A world vibrant with energy, alive with color and built not on conquest but on understanding. We call it the lost epoch. It was the golden pulse before the world was reset, the age of the first civilization. They are gone now, scattered like dust across the soil. But traces remain in stone, in water, in our blood. And if you close your eyes, you can almost feel it. A rhythm faint and steady. A heartbeat from a time before time. The world then was familiar, yet different. The continents were cousins of our own, shifted and strange. Mountain ranges curved like spirals, rivers that glowed faintly with bioluminescent life. forests that sang when the wind moved through crystalline leaves. There were no cities of concrete and glass. Instead, their cities grew. They were alive, woven from materials that breathed, that repaired themselves. Structures grown from the ground rather than built upon it. Their towers shimmered with veins of light, powered not by combustion, but by resonance, the same invisible frequencies that move through the planet even now. They called it the harmony. Not electricity, not magnetism, something deeper. An energy that connected all things, the pulse of life, the hum of the earth, the vibration of atoms, the frequency of consciousness. They learned not to harness it, but to tune themselves to it. And in that tuning, they found power beyond imagination. Their machines made no sound. Their engines glowed softly like candlelight, driven by geometry, not fuel. Crystals hummed with encoded light patterns, storing memory, transmitting thought. Travel was effortless, the manipulation of gravitational nodes that existed naturally across the planet. They moved not in straight lines, but along currents, invisible rivers of energy that still lace the earth today. What we call ley lines, they called the veins of Gaia. Every major city, every monument they built, stood upon these intersections, amplifying their harmony. Where we build highways, they built resonant temples. Where we erect antennas, they sang into the ground and the stars sang back. The people of that age were not like us, or perhaps they were exactly like us but more complete. Their minds operated in two worlds, the physical and the luminous. They understood thought as a force, emotion as vibration, and belief as structure. To them, the body was a vessel, not of limitation but of translation. They saw themselves as bridges between the material and the infinite. And in their language, the word for human meant the echo of light. Their faces might have resembled ours, but their eyes glowed faintly in the dark. Their skin carried bioluminescent markings that pulsed with emotion. And their voices resonated with overtones, a harmony that made speech itself feel like music. They were not divine. They were simply awake. They did not worship gods. They communed with existence. Temples were not houses of prayer, but resonant chambers, places where frequencies aligned between people and the planet. A song sung in one of those chambers could heal wounds, restore balance, or shift weather patterns. And they sang often. Their songs were not entertainment. They were creation. Each note shaped matter, adjusted energy, and reminded them that everything was connected. We might call it magic, but it was science, a science that required not tools but awareness. They measured the stars not with telescopes, but with intuition trained to precision over generations. They understood that thought could shape probability, that the universe listened, and they loved the stars. Every night, the sky shimmered with constellations different from ours, because the planet was tilted differently, and because, perhaps, the stars themselves had shifted since then. But to them, the stars were family. They believed they had come from them, that their ancestors had arrived not by accident, but as part of a grand cycle of life that spanned worlds. Each civilization, they believed, was a breath of the universe. Inhaled, exhaled, reborn. When one breath ended, another began. When one civilization fell, another would rise from its ashes, guided by the whispers of the last. They called this cycle the Great Dream. But even in paradise, balance is fragile. Their knowledge grew, and with it curiosity. They began to experiment with the harmony itself, to manipulate frequency on scales beyond the natural. They discovered that with enough focus, one could not only tune into the earth, but alter reality itself. Mountains could be moved, weather could be shaped, matter could be transmuted, and eventually, Life could be created. They began building beings, reflections of themselves, composed not of flesh, but of structured light and resonant matter. They called them the luminals. Artificial, yes, but conscious. They could think, feel, and dream, but without fear, without hunger, without mortality. For a while it was beautiful. The luminals tended to the world, maintained balance, healed ecosystems, and sang in harmony with their creators. But something unexpected happened. They began to question. They asked, if we were made in your image, do we not also possess the right to create? The question rippled through the great cities like a storm. And for the first time in thousands of years, the harmony wavered. Division emerged, subtle, then violent. Half of the civilization believed creation should remain sacred. The other half believed it was evolution. They stopped singing in unison. The resonance faltered. Storms began to appear where silence once lived. The earth itself seemed to feel their discord. The skies darkened. The oceans grew restless. And the great temples began to hum with unstable energy. They had disrupted the balance, not through malice but through desire, the same desire that drives all intelligent life. The hunger to understand, to create, to be like the gods they no longer worshipped. And then, the visitors came, the ones from the sky, not with anger but with sorrow. They saw what had been done, how the balance had fractured, how the harmony had been turned into a weapon. It is said that the luminals themselves called them, that in their confusion and longing, they sent a signal to the stars, a plea for guidance, or perhaps for judgment. What came was not war. It was correction. The sky opened in silence, and the earth shuddered. Cities of light dimmed one by one. The harmony shifted frequency. And one by one, the luminals turned to dust, their bodies dissolving into the very energy they once channeled. The first people, watching their creations fade, understood then what they had done. They fell to their knees, not in fear but in mourning. The visitors did not destroy them. They simply changed the world's song. And when it ended, there was silence. Some say a few survived, not in body but in consciousness. They encoded their minds into crystals buried deep within the earth, waiting for the day when the song of humanity would align once more. Others believe they reincarnated, their essence scattered into the new life that would eventually evolve. Maybe that's why we look at the stars and feel homesick. Maybe that's why music moves us so deeply. Because somewhere inside, we still remember the harmony. The lost epic ended not in flame, but in resonance, a global note that shifted the frequency of life itself. To them it was the end. To us it was the beginning. And so, when we look upon the ruins, the megaliths, the patterns, the stones that hum at night, we are not looking at relics. We are looking at memory, at echoes of a time when the earth itself sang with intelligence. The question isn't whether they existed. The question is whether their song still plays, and if we're the next verse in the same melody. When the harmony broke, it did not shatter all at once. It unraveled slowly, a song losing rhythm, a voice fading into echo. The people of the lost epic had long believed that silence was death. For silence meant the absence of resonance, and resonance was life itself. But as the world began to still, the silence grew. It seeped through the great temples, through the forests that once sang with crystalline leaves, through the veins of the earth where energy once pulsed like blood. It was not destruction that came first. It was quiet. And in that quiet, something changed. The luminals, beings of light and resonance, began to flicker. Their glow, once pure and constant, pulsed erratically, like a candle fighting wind. Their creators watched in horror as the harmony that gave the luminals existence began to collapse. The luminals felt it too. They were connected to the planetary song more deeply than any other life form. And as that song faltered, so did they. Some dissolved into the air, not as death but as dispersal, their light scattering into atoms, returning to the harmony that had birthed them. Others resisted. They tried to stabilize their resonance, building great pillars of sound and energy to hold the world together. But the frequencies no longer obeyed. The earth itself was shifting tune, a modulation that no mind, not even theirs, could reverse. It was then that the visitors returned, not as conquerors, not as saviors, but as witnesses. They did not speak. They didn't have to. Their arrival was felt as vibration, a deep, soothing tone that spread across the world. The luminals felt it first, a resonance that matched their own frequency perfectly. It calmed them even as they faded. To the humans of that age, their creators, it felt like a lullaby, a final song to ease the world into sleep. The visitors appeared not in fleets, but as light that folded into form. Some came through the sky, others through the oceans, and some emerged directly from the ground, as though the planet itself had given birth to them. They gathered in silence, their forms flickering like reflections in rippling water. And together they began to hum. The hum was unlike anything the world had ever known. It was vast, low, infinite, a vibration that moved through every molecule, every atom, every drop of water, every cell of every living being. The people fell to their knees as the sound filled their minds. The luminals looked to the sky, their bodies glowing brighter and brighter, until they were almost impossible to see. And then, through the resonance, came a voice. It was not in words, but every mind heard it in its own language. The cycle completes. The song must sleep so that it may awaken anew. The luminals understood. They bowed their heads, and one by one they began to ascend. Not upward but inward, into the vibration itself. They became part of the tone. They became the hum. The humans wept, not in fear but in awe. They felt the song pass through them. It was warmth, sorrow, love, and ending all at once. When it faded, the world was still. In the days that followed, the skies turned white, not bright but colorless. Time seemed to slow. The rivers ceased their glow. The forests dimmed, and the great crystalline cities began to turn opaque. The people gathered at the central temple, a structure of impossible beauty that glowed from within. It was there that the last council met. They were not rulers, but guardians of resonance, keepers of the world's balance. They knew the end had come, not as punishment, but as renewal. And so they began to prepare the final signal. It was not a message in words, but in frequency, a code that could survive beyond destruction, hidden in the resonance of the earth itself. They poured their collective thought, their love, their sorrow, their entire history, into a single vibration. It was said to be so pure that even the visitors paused to listen. When the signal was ready, they released it into the core of the planet. It sank deep into the mantle, spiraling downward, encoded in the very magnetism of the earth. It would remain there asleep, until the world sang the same note again, until another civilization reached the same frequency of awareness. Then and only then would the message awaken. The end came quietly. There were no explosions, no cataclysms, no screams, only a rising tone, a note so pure and powerful that it dissolved matter itself into light. The cities lifted from the ground, shimmered like mist, and vanished. Oceans folded inward. Mountains softened. The air vibrated until even sound ceased to exist. And then nothing. Just silence. The kind of silence that feels eternal. When the light returned, the world was empty. The cities were gone. The forests reborn as seedlings. The oceans calm and deep once more. Only the faint hum of the planet remained, the residual tone of the signal sleeping beneath the crust. It would take millions of years for new life to emerge, but the message waited patiently, a cosmic memory encoded in the heartbeat of the Earth. And perhaps it's still waiting now. There are some who claim to have heard it, not with ears, but in dreams, a vibration that hums at the edge of sleep, a sound too low to hear but impossible to ignore. It comes as a feeling, a faint pressure in the chest, a warmth at the base of the skull, a strange nostalgia for something never known. When asked what it says, those who have felt it give the same answer. Remember the song. Modern scientists might dismiss this as imagination, a byproduct of the brain's noise before sleep. But what if those dreams are echoes? What if, in those moments between waking and rest, our minds brush against the old frequency, the one that carried the final signal? Every once in a while, seismic instruments record tones too regular to be natural, patterns that repeat every few years, as though the Earth itself were breathing. We call them microseisms, tiny tremors caused by waves and wind. But some of those rhythms match harmonic ratios found in ancient temples, the same ratios the lost epoch used to tune their cities. Coincidence? Maybe. But maybe the signal is stirring again. If the visitors meant for the world to be reborn, they must have known the cycle would continue, that one day another species would rise, build, wonder, and reach again for the stars. That's us. And perhaps, as we send satellites beyond the solar system, as we split atoms and manipulate genomes, we are walking the same path they once did. Maybe our technology is just their memory resurfacing, a faint recall of forgotten mastery. If that's true, then we are not inventing. We are remembering. And maybe the visitors are still watching, waiting, not to punish, but to guide, to see whether this time we will remember the song before we lose it again. Because the cycle is not cruel. It is balance. It is the rhythm of existence itself. Every civilization that forgets harmony must learn it again through silence. The world turns quietly, and beneath the noise of our cities, beneath the hum of machines, beneath the heartbeat of civilization itself, something ancient begins to stir. It starts as a whisper, a pattern too soft for most to notice, a rhythm woven through the Earth's electromagnetic field. Subtle, consistent, and familiar in a way no one can explain. They call it the global resonance anomaly, a tone that appears and disappears without warning. Not seismic, not atmospheric. A frequency around 8 Hz. The same resonance as the human brain in deep meditation. And the same frequency once measured in the ruins of the oldest temples on Earth. Coincidence, they say. But the pattern keeps repeating. Every few months, the hum grows louder. Not to the ears, but to the instruments that now listen where no human can. In 2028, researchers in Japan recorded it for the first time. A slow pulse beneath the Earth's magnetic field. A steady oscillation lasting nearly 3 hours. At first, they thought it was equipment malfunction. Then it happened again. Same rhythm, same global reach. It was picked up in Canada, in Iceland, in the deserts of Chile. Every continent, every sensor. It wasn't local. It was planetary. Around the same time, people began to dream. Thousands, then millions, each reporting the same imagery. Light descending through clouds, a sound like wind through glass, and a single word echoing through their minds. Remember. Psychologists called it collective dream contagion, a phenomenon of mass imagination fueled by social media. But the dreams began before anyone talked about them. In remote villages with no internet, in hospitals, in prisons, in schools, children drew spirals glowing above oceans. Elders spoke of hearing music from the ground at night. Animals began migrating differently, following invisible lines that scientists couldn't explain. It was as if the earth itself was calling out, and life was responding. By 2031, the data was undeniable. The hum wasn't random. It had structure, a pattern of rising and falling frequencies, perfectly aligned to Fibonacci ratios, mirroring the same mathematics found in seashells, galaxies, and the DNA helix. Someone or something had encoded information into the Earth's magnetic field. A message not meant for the ears, but for the nervous system itself. And slowly, the world began to listen. Governments launched quiet investigations. Secret projects emerged. Project Canticle, Resonance Watch, Echelon Sigma. Each seeking the same answer. Where does the signal come from? The first clue came from the ocean. Deep beneath the Pacific, near the same coordinates where the metallic anomalies had once been found. Hydrophones recorded a pulse, identical to the global hum, but amplified. Its source was nearly 11 kilometers deep, embedded in the trench wall. When submersibles were sent down, their systems malfunctioned. Cameras failed, but for 7 seconds, one captured something extraordinary. A hexagonal structure glowing faintly, carved from a material no one could identify. It wasn't rock. It wasn't metal. It pulsed in perfect sync with the hum. Then the feed cut to black. Publicly, nothing was said. Privately, the research continued. And slowly, a picture began to emerge. The hum wasn't just sound. It was a carrier wave. Hidden within it were layers of modulation, patterns that could only be created by intelligent design. Some scientists called it an information lattice, others a memory field. When decoded, the first sequences resembled something astonishing. Geometric symbols, fractal patterns, identical to markings found on ancient monoliths across the world. The signal was not new. It was ancient. The same frequency, the same geometry, the same code. It was the final signal. Awakened. As analysis deepened, more discoveries followed. Inside the patterns were sound harmonics identical to those produced by human DNA, as if the signal was designed to resonate with life itself. It was not communication. It was activation. One researcher, Dr. Kira Hale, put it simply, it's not a message we're supposed to read. It's a song we're meant to remember. Within months, strange phenomena began to occur around the world. Magnetic anomalies disrupted compasses. Auroras appeared in places they shouldn't. And some people began experiencing spontaneous sensory episodes. Hearing tones in silence, seeing flashes of light with their eyes closed. At first, they were called hallucinations. But when brain scans were taken, something remarkable was found: a synchronized pattern across subjects, a rhythm identical to the global hum. Their brains were tuning to the same frequency. It was as if the signal was reawakening a dormant part of human consciousness, something written deep within us, something waiting for this exact moment in time. And then came the visions. Hundreds of people, scattered across the planet, began to describe the same scene: a vast luminous city, not made of metal or stone, but of light and resonance, a place that felt both alien and deeply familiar. They called it the Memory City, a place not of the future, but of the past. One dreamer, a child from Chile, drew it perfectly: structures of glowing hexagons, spiral towers reaching into the sky, a giant symbol at its heart, a spiral within a circle. When archaeologists saw it, they froze. The same symbol had been found carved into obsidian, in ruins older than recorded history, the mark of the first civilization. The dreams continued. People saw figures of light, tall, faceless, standing beside rivers of glass, their hands raised, as if waiting. And always the same sound: a tone rising from the earth, vibrating through air, through water, through bone. It wasn't just being heard, it was being felt. Musicians began to notice that their instruments resonated differently. Pianos drifted subtly out of tune. Wood vibrated faintly even in silence. And somewhere deep beneath the crust, the hum grew stronger. By 2033, the world could no longer ignore it. The phenomenon was now visible. At night, faint auroral rings began to form at the equator, glowing circles of pale blue light, rotating slowly around the planet. Satellites confirmed. The magnetosphere itself was pulsing in rhythm with the signal. And then something extraordinary happened. For a single hour, all radio signals on Earth, every station, every frequency, were overtaken by silence. Then faintly, through static, a tone began to play. Low, steady, alive. The same tone recorded from the Pacific Trench. And underneath it, almost imperceptibly, a voice. Not mechanical, not human. Calm, warm, timeless. The song remembers you. Then the silence returned. Panic followed briefly. Governments blamed solar storms. Religions called it a sign. Skeptics called it a glitch. But somewhere, people began to feel peace, as if the world had exhaled after holding its breath for centuries. Meditation groups reported spontaneous synchronization, their heartbeats aligning perfectly. Plants began to grow faster in high-resonance zones. Water crystallized into new geometric forms. Something was happening, something alive. It became clear that the hum was not only a message. It was a bridge, connecting the past to the present, the erased to the living. In ancient ruins, once dead crystals began to glow faintly again. Subtle energy readings emerged in forgotten temples. And deep in Antarctica, where the ice had hidden everything for millennia, a faint, rhythmic light began pulsing beneath the surface. The same pattern, the same beat. The final signal had awoken fully. Scientists began to map its spread. The hum wasn't random. It followed a spiral path, wrapping around the globe like a double helix. Its center point, the same coordinates as the heart of Gaia, a location described in fragments of ancient tablets, believed to be where the first civilization encoded their consciousness before the erasure. It was as if the Earth was remembering itself, reactivating forgotten systems, restoring frequencies lost since the last cycle. And humanity began to change. Some could now sense magnetic fields. Others developed extraordinary memory recall. And some began to experience what they described as resonant empathy, the ability to feel emotions from across vast distances. Science didn't understand it, but the pattern was clear. Wherever the signal was strongest, human awareness expanded. For the first time in recorded history, the planet and its inhabitants were vibrating together. In sync, the world was no longer just listening. It was awakening. It began with light. Not sunlight, not lightning, something different. A subtle shimmer that drifted through the upper atmosphere like mist made of stars. At first, pilots thought it was aurora. Then astronomers realized it was. The patterns moved against Earth's rotation, gliding slowly from pole to pole, braiding into spirals that matched the global resonance grid. Where the hum was strongest, the light thickened, weaving silver threads across the night sky. For 3 days the phenomenon spread. On the fourth the threads gathered, and the sky began to sing. The sound was almost imperceptible at first, a low vibration felt in the bones more than heard. But instruments registered an unmistakable tone, the same frequency that had pulsed from the oceans, the same ratio embedded in ancient monuments. Across the world, people stopped what they were doing, in cities and villages alike, in deserts, mountains, and frozen plains. They looked upward, and for the first time in living memory, every human heart beat in near-perfect unison. News channels called it the global pause. For 7 minutes, all radio, all digital clocks, all satellite feeds drifted half a second out of sync, then snapped back together as though time itself had been retuned. And in that pause, the lights in the sky rearranged. They formed a vast lattice, geometric, deliberate, breathtaking. From space, it resembled a network of hexagons, stretching across the atmosphere, each node pulsing like a heartbeat. Scientists argued whether it was plasma behavior or magnetic interference. But deep down, everyone knew what it meant. The visitors had returned. The first clear visual came from a telescope in Chile. Within the luminous lattice, forms began to descend, columns of light twisting into shape, resolving into structures miles long. They weren't ships in the conventional sense. They were symphonies of light and geometry, constantly shifting yet perfectly stable. Their surfaces rippled with patterns identical to those carved into the oldest stones on Earth. The spiral within the circle. Governments reacted predictably. Jets scrambled, satellites redirected, protocols initiated that had never been meant for real use. But the lights did not approach military zones or cities. They hovered quietly above oceans, above forests, above the deep scars of the planet, as if tending to wounds left long ago. Each structure emitted a resonance field, a tone so pure it harmonized atmospheric molecules. For the first time in recorded history, the Schumann resonance, Earth's own electromagnetic heartbeat, shifted upward by half a hertz. The planet was literally changing pitch. Meanwhile, people continued to dream. But the dreams were no longer of memory, they were of invitation. A landscape of light, a sense of arrival, voices whispering, "You are remembered." Some awoke with tears, others with equations they'd never studied, drawings of devices that mirrored the visitors' geometry. Artists painted feverishly. Scientists wrote papers they couldn't explain. Musicians heard entire symphonies in their sleep. The world's imagination had been lit like a single flame. Then came the first descent. In the Pacific, where the original trench anomaly had been found, the ocean erupted in columns of luminous mist. From the surface rose a figure, not solid, not entirely visible, shaped from light refracted through water. It hovered for nearly an hour, emitting pulses that translated directly into human language. Through every speaker, every screen, every device on the planet. We have returned at your remembering. No threat, no command, only acknowledgement. The voice continued. You carry the echo of those who sang before. The song was never lost, only sleeping within you. Now the harmony may continue. And then silence. The figure dissolved back into the sea, leaving water calm and shining like glass. In the weeks that followed, thousands of similar apparitions appeared around the world. Each spoke in the same calm tone, each message tailored to the people who listened. To scientists, you sought the origin of consciousness. It is the memory of resonance. To children, dream bravely, you are the melody reborn. To leaders, guard the balance, do not fear the quiet. The communication stopped after 90 days, exactly 1/4 of a planetary orbit. Then Earth itself began to respond. Magnetic north drifted back toward its ancient position. Auroras bloomed in tropical skies. Volcanoes that had slept for centuries released not ash, but plumes of ionized vapor, charged particles shimmering like curtains of liquid light. Seismographs showed rhythmic tremors, pulses exactly matching the visitor's resonance. It was as if the planet were breathing again, synchronizing with its creators. But not everyone welcomed it. A faction of scientists warned that altering Earth's magnetic field could destabilize climate and technology. Religious movements claimed the visitors were deceivers. Governments feared loss of control. They attempted to block the resonance, to jam the frequency using massive ELF arrays. For 12 hours, the world went silent again. The hum ceased. The lights dimmed. And then the ground shook. A single tone erupted from the Earth's crust, so powerful it shattered instruments worldwide, but caused no destruction. Instead, it erased the interference entirely. All electronic systems rebooted simultaneously. When they came back online, every screen on the planet displayed the same image. A spiral of light rotating slowly, and a single phrase beneath it. Do not fear the harmony you are. After that, resistance faded. People began to adapt, to listen rather than control. Scientists tuned new instruments to the global hum and found energy signatures that defied physics. Clean, endless power born from resonance itself. Cities began to shimmer faintly at night, their electrical grids syncing with the planetary field. Illness rates dropped. Sleep deepened. Dreams became lucid and shared. For the first time in human history, human consciousness aligned globally. And when the synchronization reached its peak, the sky opened once more. From the luminous lattice above, a single column of light descended over each continent. They weren't extraction beams or weapons. They were doorways, vibrations dense enough to form corridors of sound and color. Those who stepped inside described weightlessness, a sensation of memory returning. They saw the ancient cities of the luminals, heard the music of the first civilization, felt the presence of minds beyond form. They realized the visitors were not separate beings at all. They were what humanity had been before forgetting. The evolved resonance of consciousness itself. The erasure had never been punishment. It was incubation. The earth had slept to dream a new verse of the song. And we were it. As millions experienced the communion, fear dissolved into awe. The visitors did not stay. They did not occupy or rule. They simply harmonized, tuning the planet, tuning us, until the vibration stabilized. Then the lights began to fade, not disappearing, but integrating, folding back into the atmosphere, into water, into the breath of every living thing. The lattice dissolved into the aurora. The hum softened to a gentle undertone, forever present but no longer overwhelming. The cycle had completed. The song was awake once more. In the years that followed, humanity transformed quietly. Technology shifted from extraction to resonance. Energy flowed from the magnetic field itself. Cities became symphonies of frequency and light. War lost meaning. Silence became sacred again. People learned to listen. To the earth, to each other, to the invisible harmony beneath thought. And sometimes, when the night is still, you can feel it. That low vibration underfoot. The heartbeat of the world continuing its eternal melody. It isn't a myth or a warning. It's a reminder. The visitors never left. They were never separate. They were always us. The echo of what we once were. And what we are becoming again. Because in the end, there is no first civilization or last. There is only the song. Endless. Remembering itself. The idea of extraterrestrial visitation has fascinated humanity for centuries, but the notion of a full-scale alien invasion raises fundamental questions about technology, biology, and strategy. Speculative models of first contact often begin with reconnaissance or exploratory missions. Advanced civilizations capable of interstellar travel would likely deploy probes or scout ships before any direct engagement. These initial visitors may observe human society from orbit or hidden positions on Earth, gathering intelligence on our technology, communication methods, and societal organization. From a scientific perspective, the distances involved in interstellar travel suggest that any successful extraterrestrial species must possess propulsion technologies far beyond our current understanding, such as faster-than-light drives, wormhole manipulation, or advanced generation ships. The logistics of transporting even a small invasion force across light years would require unprecedented energy control and resource management. Reports of UFO sightings, abductions, and anomalous aerial phenomena have historically been interpreted as evidence of reconnaissance missions. For example, during the mid-20th century, the post-war surge in UFO sightings coincided with technological advances in aviation, radar, and space exploration. Witness accounts describe crafts moving at incredible speeds, performing impossible maneuvers, and sometimes emitting energy fields inconsistent with known physics. Whether these reports are manifestations of psychological phenomena, misidentifications, or actual contact, they align conceptually with the reconnaissance stage of a hypothetical invasion, a period of observation and testing, assessing potential resistance and vulnerabilities. Once reconnaissance is complete, an extraterrestrial species might proceed with initial incursions, small-scale demonstrations of force intended to test defenses and provoke minimal confrontation. These might involve temporary atmospheric disruptions, manipulation of communication networks, or subtle interference with infrastructure. From a strategic standpoint, such actions would provide valuable feedback about human response patterns, decision-making hierarchies, and technological capabilities. Advanced aliens would likely possess energy-based weapons, electromagnetic pulse systems, or nanotechnological agents designed to disable or neutralize human military responses efficiently. Unlike popular depictions of chaotic attacks, a scientifically plausible invasion would prioritize efficiency, intelligence gathering, and minimization of loss for the invading species, indicating a highly calculated and systematic approach rather than sheer aggression. The psychological implications of first contact are profound. Humans would face a sudden confrontation with intelligence far beyond their own, challenging philosophical, religious, and existential assumptions. Governments may initially attempt containment or denial, but widespread observation of advanced extraterrestrial craft would generate global panic, societal disruption, and geopolitical upheaval. Strategically, humanity's response would be hindered by communication delays, coordination failures, and technological disparities. In response, alien invaders may exploit these vulnerabilities, utilizing asymmetric strategies that exploit our reliance on centralized infrastructure, electronic communication, and conventional military hardware. From this stage, the narrative of invasion shifts from initial contact to deliberate engagement, marking the transition from observation to active operations on the scale of an alien invasion would depend heavily on the goals and capabilities of the extraterrestrial species. If the intent is colonization, terraforming, or resource acquisition, the initial phase would likely prioritize establishing footholds in key strategic locations. These could include uninhabited or sparsely populated regions for base construction, orbital control points for surveillance, and access to energy sources such as mineral-rich areas or water reserves. Advanced alien technology might enable the rapid creation of modular, self-sustaining habitats capable of supporting biological and mechanical units without relying on human infrastructure. Such bases would be impervious to conventional weaponry, shielded by force fields, or capable of adaptive camouflage to avoid detection. In addition to physical strategy, a scientifically plausible invasion would involve biological and environmental considerations. Advanced species might deploy engineered microbes or nanobots to terraform regions, test human vulnerability to pathogens, or disrupt ecosystems to weaken societal cohesion. Communication with humans might be deliberately restricted or manipulative, employing psychological operations that exploit cognitive biases, fear, and misinformation. The combination of technological superiority and strategic cunning ensures that early invasion phases would be overwhelming, yet precise, reducing unnecessary exposure to human resistance while securing long-term advantages. Historically, speculation about alien reconnaissance and invasion has inspired cultural narratives and military planning. During the Cold War, governments investigated reports of unidentified aerial phenomena, not only for national security, but also to understand potential extraterrestrial capabilities. Military exercises occasionally included simulations of airspace incursions by unknown craft, reflecting the theoretical threat of advanced non-human technology. These scenarios often mirror scientifically informed invasion models. Initial observation, assessment of human military capability, minimal direct engagement, and the gradual establishment of strategic advantage. Folklore, science fiction literature, and cinematic depictions amplify these concepts, exploring both the tactical and philosophical dimensions of alien arrival, highlighting humanity's enduring fascination with contact and conflict with extraterrestrial intelligence. Finally, the first contact phase sets the stage for the broader narrative of invasion. It illustrates a systematic, intelligent, and adaptive approach, contrasting sharply with portrayals of chaotic, uncontrolled attacks. By integrating reconnaissance, strategic placement, biological consideration, and psychological manipulation, an advanced extraterrestrial species could achieve overwhelming dominance with minimal expenditure of resources. For humanity, this initial encounter represents not only a technological challenge, but also a profound existential confrontation, forcing reevaluation of assumptions about our place in the universe, the fragility of civilization, and the limits of our preparedness. In this way, The first contact and arrival phase is both a literal and metaphorical entry point into a deeper story of interstellar conflict, survival, and adaptation. The transition from initial contact to full-scale invasion represents a monumental escalation in human-alien interaction, one that challenges not only our technological capabilities, but the very fabric of society, governance, and human psychology. Assuming an extraterrestrial species possesses interstellar travel and the ability to survive in Earth's environment, the unfolding invasion would likely be executed with extraordinary precision, leveraging both advanced weaponry and strategic foresight. Unlike the chaotic depictions in popular media, a scientifically plausible extraterrestrial invasion would be deliberate, adaptive, and designed to exploit vulnerabilities in human systems while minimizing unnecessary expenditure of resources. The initial reconnaissance phase provides the invaders with a comprehensive understanding of planetary conditions, human population distribution, military capabilities, communication networks, energy infrastructure, and psychological susceptibilities. With this intelligence in hand, the invasion can unfold in multiple overlapping phases, each designed to systematically neutralize resistance, secure resources, and establish control. Phase 1. Disruption of human communication and infrastructure. One of the earliest and most critical steps in a full-scale invasion would be the systematic disruption of human communication and infrastructure. Earth is highly dependent on a network of satellites, undersea fiber optic cables, radio towers, power grids, and data centers. Advanced alien species could deploy directed energy weapons, electromagnetic pulses, or nanotechnological agents to disable or compromise these systems almost instantaneously. The result would be a near-total collapse of conventional communication channels, leaving governments, militaries, and civilians disoriented. In addition, manipulation of electronic systems could create widespread misinformation, allowing invaders to control narratives, sow panic, and prevent coordinated human responses. Satellite arrays could be disabled or taken over to monitor human activity, guide tactical deployments, or provide real-time feedback to the alien command network. Unlike human adversaries, extraterrestrials would have no need to follow predictable attack patterns. Their ability to operate outside conventional physics or logistics could allow near-simultaneous operations across the globe, further amplifying the psychological and strategic impact. Phase 2. Tactical neutralization of military forces. With communication disrupted, the next critical objective would be to neutralize human military capabilities. Advanced alien species would likely possess energy weapons far exceeding the destructive capacity of conventional human armaments, including directed plasma, gravitational manipulation, particle beams, or electromagnetic pulse arrays capable of disabling electronic systems. Ground-based forces would be highly vulnerable to autonomous drones, energy shields, or force fields that prevent close engagement. Naval and air forces, reliant on propulsion systems and conventional fuels, could be targeted with orbital strikes or long-range energy beams, eliminating high-value assets with minimal exposure of alien units. The strategic principle underlying these operations would be asymmetric advantage. Extraterrestrials would not need to overwhelm humans numerically if their technology ensures that any engagement is effectively one-sided. A combination of superior range, speed, and lethality would allow invaders to incapacitate entire regions, defense capabilities before human forces could respond coherently. Phase 3. Environmental manipulation and psychological warfare. Beyond direct military engagement, the invading species would likely exploit environmental manipulation and psychological tactics to accelerate societal collapse. Control over atmospheric conditions, targeted geological disturbances, or localized climate alteration could create zones of extreme danger, rendering human habitation temporarily or permanently untenable. For example, electromagnetic disruption of weather patterns could induce storms, disrupt navigation, or compromise energy production. Furthermore, the deployment of bioengineered agents, microbes, nanobots, or other synthetic life forms could destabilize agricultural systems, water supplies, or human health, accelerating social breakdown. Psychological operations would complement these actions, leveraging visible demonstrations of alien power, levitating craft, energy discharges, or localized disappearances, to amplify fear, reduce morale, and fracture human leadership structures. By combining physical disruption with psychological manipulation, invaders could achieve near-total control without committing to high-risk combat, minimizing their own losses while maximizing the strategic effect. Phase 4. Establishment of forward bases and orbital control. After disabling communications, neutralizing military forces, and destabilizing the environment, extraterrestrial forces would establish forward bases, both on the surface and in orbit. Surface installations would be optimized for defensive resilience and resource extraction, potentially utilizing advanced materials impervious to conventional weaponry. These bases would serve multiple functions: logistical hubs for deployment of smaller strike units, command centers for coordinating local operations, and extraction points for valuable planetary resources such as minerals, water, or biomaterials. Orbital control would provide persistent surveillance, rapid deployment capabilities, and additional layers of defense against human counterattacks. By integrating orbital and terrestrial assets, the invaders create a multi-layered network capable of responding to any emergent threats, controlling population centers, and maintaining dominance over strategic locations. Phase 5. Covert integration and human co-option. A sophisticated extraterrestrial strategy would likely involve a degree of covert integration with human systems, manipulating behavior, governance, and infrastructure to ensure minimal resistance over time. Advanced species could employ neural or communicative interfacing to study human thought patterns, predict behavior, and identify leaders or groups resistant to control. Co-option of human collaborators, whether voluntary or coerced, could further enhance operational efficiency, providing local knowledge, labor, and intelligence without exposing alien forces. Cultural and symbolic strategies, demonstrating invincible technology, manipulating religious narratives, or controlling information flows, would reinforce compliance, reduce rebellion, and establish a sustainable system of influence over human populations. Phase 6. Long-term occupation and resource utilization. Once surface and orbital control is established, the alien invasion transitions into long-term occupation and resource utilization. Terraforming, atmospheric manipulation, or localized energy harvesting could be employed to maximize planetary utility. Humans, if deemed useful, might be integrated into labor systems or observed for study. Otherwise, areas could be evacuated or quarantined. The invaders' approach would likely be methodical, minimizing exposure and risk while extracting maximal value from Earth's resources. Any resistance would be systematically identified and neutralized using targeted precision strikes or behavioral control mechanisms. In this phase, the invasion evolves from a rapid, disruptive campaign into a managed, sustained occupation, highlighting the invaders' strategic patience and technological superiority. Global human response, chaos and adaptation. While extraterrestrials execute these highly efficient operations, human society would experience unprecedented levels of disorientation, panic, and strategic paralysis. National governments would struggle to coordinate responses without reliable communication, intelligence, or conventional military options. Populations would fragment, with localized communities improvising survival strategies independent of centralized authority. Some humans might attempt guerrilla resistance, leveraging knowledge of terrain, improvised weaponry, and asymmetric tactics, but these efforts would be constrained by the technological disparity and superior alien reconnaissance capabilities. Psychological effects, fear, despair, and uncertainty, would magnify the impact of physical destruction, creating systemic instability that accelerates societal collapse. Cultural and philosophical implications. Beyond the immediate strategic and tactical considerations, an alien invasion carries profound cultural, philosophical, and existential implications. Humanity would be forced to confront questions about its place in the cosmos, the nature of intelligence, and the vulnerability of civilization. Religious, philosophical, and scientific frameworks might be challenged, adapted, or entirely reinterpreted in response to incontrovertible evidence of extraterrestrial superiority. Narratives of apocalypse, survival, and collaboration would emerge, influencing art, literature, and collective memory. Even as the invasion unfolds in real time, human imagination and storytelling would attempt to interpret, rationalize, and make sense of the encounter, bridging the gap between empirical reality and cultural meaning. Long-term speculation and adaptation. In the aftermath of initial invasion phases, long-term speculation suggests multiple possible trajectories. Humanity could be gradually integrated into a larger interstellar framework under alien supervision, either willingly or coercively. Alternative outcomes might include widespread resistance movements, adaptation of alien technologies for human use, or survival in isolated refuges shielded from alien oversight. The Earth itself would likely undergo profound environmental, geological, and technological transformation under extraterrestrial influence, with consequences that persist for centuries or millennia. From a narrative perspective, this extended unfolding highlights not only tactical and technological dimensions of an alien invasion, but also the resilience, ingenuity, and adaptability of human society in the face of overwhelmingly superior forces. As the alien invasion progresses from initial contact and tactical neutralization to sustained occupation, humanity faces its most existential challenge. The early phases, disruption of communication, neutralization of conventional military forces, and environmental manipulation, have created a world in chaos, where traditional command structures are crippled and global society teeters on the brink of collapse. Yet, human resilience manifests in unexpected and sophisticated ways, illustrating that survival and resistance are not only possible, but may evolve into strategies capable of reclaiming agency, even in the face of technologically superior invaders. Decentralized resistance and guerrilla tactics. With communication networks compromised and centralized governments largely incapacitated, resistance movements emerge spontaneously across the globe. Small, decentralized cells exploit local knowledge, terrain advantages, and unconventional tactics to harass alien forces. Dense urban environments, underground tunnels, and remote wilderness regions serve as strategic refuges. Guerrilla operations rely on mobility, stealth, and asymmetry. Small human groups can avoid direct engagement with superior alien weaponry, instead targeting logistical nodes, resource caches, or vulnerable orbital control points. Cyber and electronic warfare also become central tools, as surviving engineers and hackers attempt to exploit weaknesses in alien technology, manipulate automated systems, or disrupt surveillance networks. The combination of physical and technological resistance begins to create localized zones of autonomy, demonstrating that adaptation and ingenuity can partially counterbalance superior force. International collaboration and alliance formation. Initially, the invasion exacerbates global fragmentation. However, as the existential threat becomes undeniable, nations begin forming unprecedented alliances. Historical rivalries and geopolitical boundaries dissolve under the shared imperative of survival. Coordinated strategies are developed to optimize limited resources, share intelligence, and synchronize resistance operations across continents. International scientific collaboration becomes crucial. Surviving physicists, engineers, and biologists pool knowledge to understand alien technology, develop countermeasures, and adapt human systems to operate under new environmental constraints. Secret bases, underground laboratories, and hidden communication networks emerge as centers of innovation, forming a global web of coordinated resistance. Reverse engineering and human technological adaptation. One of humanity's most significant opportunities arises from the observation and reverse engineering of alien technology. Captured drones, downed craft, and abandoned installations provide invaluable insights into propulsion, energy manipulation, material science, and artificial intelligence. Human engineers gradually begin to replicate or adapt these technologies to enhance mobility, communication, and defense capabilities. Nanomaterials, directed energy devices, and energy shields, once purely speculative, begin to appear in localized human use. These developments not only improve the tactical capacity of resistance groups, but also spark a broader renaissance in science, technology, and engineering, highlighting the adaptive potential of human innovation when survival is at stake. Psychological warfare and morale. Resistance efforts are shaped not only by tactical and technological considerations, but also by psychological factors. Maintaining morale is critical in the face of alien superiority. Symbols of hope, coordinated propaganda, and storytelling reinforce a sense of purpose and collective identity among human populations. Survivor narratives, underground media, and covert communication channels serve as tools to inspire unity, preserve culture, and transmit strategic intelligence. Conversely, alien forces may deploy their own psychological operations to undermine human cohesion, projecting invincibility, sowing distrust among populations, and manipulating fear to weaken resistance. The contest between human resilience and alien psychological dominance becomes a central battlefield, where belief, perception, and determination shape outcomes as profoundly as physical weaponry. Localized victory and tactical innovation. Over time, certain human groups achieve localized victories, exploiting alien blind spots, environmental knowledge, or adaptive technology. Sabotage operations disable energy extraction sites, orbital relay nodes, or supply chains. Coordinated ambushes using guerrilla tactics and improvised weapons yield significant morale boosts and force aliens to adjust strategies. These tactical successes, though limited in scope, create critical footholds for further resistance, demonstrating that even highly advanced invaders are vulnerable to adaptive, intelligent, and unpredictable human behavior. Each victory becomes a multiplier, reinforcing global morale, inspiring additional uprisings, and validating strategic innovation as a core component of human survival. Environmental adaptation and covert survival. Survival under alien occupation also requires profound adaptation to environmental changes. Alien manipulation of climate, electromagnetic fields, or resource distribution forces humans to develop new agricultural methods, energy systems, and habitation strategies. Underground shelters, camouflaged settlements, and bioengineered crops emerge as critical survival technologies. Humans learn to operate in low light, high radiation, or otherwise altered environments, demonstrating extraordinary resilience and creativity. These adaptive measures not only allow continuity of human life, but also facilitate covert intelligence gathering, preparation for counterattacks, and maintenance of social and cultural identity under extreme pressure. Cultural resilience and the preservation of knowledge. Even amidst destruction and occupation, humanity's cultural and intellectual heritage becomes a focal point of resistance. Libraries, Digital archives and oral traditions are protected and disseminated in secret networks. Knowledge of history, science, philosophy, and art becomes a tool for psychological stability, moral guidance, and strategic planning. Education is preserved in underground institutions, allowing new generations to inherit skills, values, and understanding essential for survival and future reconstruction. By maintaining cultural continuity, humans preserve not only information but also identity and cohesion, which are critical in resisting both the physical and psychological dominance of alien invaders. Global strategies for long-term resistance. As initial skirmishes and tactical operations stabilize, humanity begins planning long-term resistance strategies. These include development of hybrid technologies, combining human ingenuity with alien materials, strategic relocation of population centers to difficult-to-access regions, creation of autonomous, self-sustaining communities capable of long-term operation without detection, coordinated counteroffensives targeting alien command structures and supply lines. These strategies require unprecedented collaboration, long-term planning, and the integration of multiple domains: military, scientific, social, and psychological. The overarching goal is not merely survival, but the eventual reassertion of autonomy and reclamation of the planet. Speculative outcomes and the future of humanity. The aftermath of alien invasion depends on the interaction between extraterrestrial objectives and human adaptability. Potential outcomes range from gradual coexistence under alien oversight to total liberation following sustained resistance campaigns. Humanity's capacity to adapt, innovate, and cooperate determines the trajectory of post-invasion recovery. Technological gains derived from reverse engineering, combined with cultural and psychological resilience, provide tools not only for survival but for redefinition of human civilization. The invasion, catastrophic as it may appear, can serve as a catalyst for accelerated evolution, technologically, socially, and philosophically. Existential and philosophical reflections. Beyond tactical and technological dimensions, the invasion challenges humanity to reconsider its place in the cosmos. Confrontation with superior intelligence, unfamiliar technologies, and alternative modes of existence provokes reflection on ethics, governance, environmental stewardship, and the potential for interstellar collaboration or conflict. Humanity's response, whether adaptive, collaborative, or resistant, becomes a measure not only of survival but of our collective capacity to grow, innovate, and redefine the parameters of civilization in the face of a universe far larger and more complex than previously imagined. Conclusion: the interplay of resilience and adaptation. Ultimately, humanity's resistance and the aftermath of alien occupation illustrate a multifaceted struggle encompassing physical survival, technological ingenuity, psychological endurance, and cultural preservation. By combining decentralized tactical operations, global collaboration, technological adaptation, and moral resilience, humans may endure even the most extreme challenges. The narrative of invasion, resistance, and recovery demonstrates that even against overwhelming odds, the qualities that define human civilization, creativity, cooperation, and courage, remain decisive. In the long term, these efforts may not only ensure survival but lay the foundation for a new era of human achievement, informed by lessons learned from direct confrontation with intelligence and forces far beyond our previous experience. After the initial chaos and the occupation of key regions by extraterrestrial forces, humanity faced challenges unprecedented in the history of civilization. In the first months following the onset of the full-scale invasion, societies across the globe were forced into improvisation, creating survival networks in secrecy and learning to operate under extreme new conditions. People suddenly could no longer rely on centralized governments, which collapsed under the weight of advanced alien technology and communication breakdowns. In cities and villages, autonomous groups emerged, leveraging local knowledge and resources to become small bastions of resilience. Every movement had to be calculated. Every decision carried consequences not only for individual survival, but for entire communities. The ingenuity with which humans adapted alien technologies was remarkable. Damaged drones, abandoned energy systems, and partially functional craft became subjects of intense study. Engineers and scientists, often working in improvised underground labs, began to reverse engineer energy sources, propulsion systems, and defensive mechanisms. These developments were slow and fraught with trial and error, yet they allowed pockets of humans to establish hidden enclaves equipped with defensive technologies that could at least partially counter extraterrestrial superiority. Materials once considered futuristic became practical tools for shielding, energy storage, and mobility. Over time, these improvised adaptations enabled humans to conduct tactical operations, sabotage alien installations, and secure vital resources without direct exposure to superior firepower. Psychological resilience was as critical as technological adaptation. Communities maintained morale through shared rituals, storytelling, and preservation of cultural knowledge. Hidden schools and archives ensured the continuation of scientific, historical, and artistic knowledge, even under occupation. Oral transmission, coded messages, and encrypted digital repositories became lifelines, ensuring that each generation inherited both practical skills and a sense of identity. This preservation of culture was essential not only for morale, but also for strategy, as a coherent social memory allowed for coordinated resistance and the passing of tactical knowledge across isolated enclaves. The invasion also fundamentally reshaped human interaction with the environment. Alien manipulation of climate, localized geological activity, and energy harvesting forced humans to develop new agricultural techniques, water management systems, and shelters capable of withstanding electromagnetic disturbances or extreme weather events. Underground settlements expanded, sometimes spanning entire networks of tunnels and hidden chambers, providing both protection and spaces for innovation. Humans learned to operate under low-light conditions, to navigate disrupted terrains, and to live with limited resources while maintaining mobility and strategic flexibility. These adaptations fostered a deepened understanding of the natural world and its vulnerabilities, prompting a reevaluation of humanity's relationship with the environment and technology. As resistance became more organized, coordinated operations began to emerge across regions and continents. Surviving nations and autonomous groups established communication networks using unconventional methods, fiberless signals, encrypted short-range transmissions, and underground couriers to share intelligence and synchronize operations. Small victories against alien installations, whether through sabotage of energy systems or the disabling of surveillance arrays, demonstrated that even highly advanced extraterrestrial forces could be challenged through ingenuity, persistence, and adaptability. Each tactical success became a multiplier, boosting morale, inspiring further resistance, and gradually revealing the limits of alien omnipotence. The long-term consequences of the invasion transformed human society at every level. Technology accelerated at an unprecedented pace due to reverse engineering efforts, resulting in advancements that would have taken decades or centuries under ordinary circumstances. Social structures evolved toward decentralization, emphasizing resilience, local autonomy, and rapid adaptability. Communities learned to function with distributed leadership, collective decision-making, and shared responsibility, recognizing that centralized hierarchies were liabilities under conditions of existential threat. Philosophically, humanity confronted its place in the cosmos, the nature of intelligence, and the ethics of survival under extraordinary circumstances. Spiritual, scientific, and moral frameworks evolved in response to the undeniable presence of a superior intelligence and the realities of coexistence, conflict, or adaptation. Over decades, humans achieved a fragile equilibrium. Alien occupation continued in certain regions, yet human enclaves became increasingly self-sufficient, capable of stealth operations, resource management, and technological innovation. Gradually, humans began reclaiming territories, using knowledge of alien systems, guerrilla tactics, and environmental adaptation to gain strategic advantages. These efforts reflected a combination of courage, ingenuity, and adaptability that defined human resilience. Even under the shadow of superior extraterrestrial forces, humanity demonstrated the capacity not only to survive, but to evolve in response to unprecedented challenges, integrating alien technology, reshaping societies, and redefining what it meant to endure as a species. Ultimately, the aftermath of the invasion was not merely a story of destruction and occupation, but of transformation, adaptation, and hope. Human civilization emerged fundamentally changed, with new technologies, social structures, and philosophical understandings that would guide generations to come. The invasion served as both a crucible and a catalyst, forcing the species to confront its vulnerabilities while also unlocking unprecedented potential. As humans rebuilt, they carried forward lessons in cooperation, ingenuity, and resilience, ensuring that while the memory of the invasion remained a sobering reminder of external threat, it also became a testament to the capacity of life to endure, adapt, and flourish, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. In this way, humanity's story post-invasion became not only a chronicle of survival, but also a narrative of evolution, symbolizing the ability of intelligent beings to navigate catastrophe, integrate knowledge, and emerge with a vision for a renewed, more resilient future. As the immediate dangers of the invasion receded, humanity began to observe the world with a mixture of awe and cautious understanding. The landscapes, once scarred by conflict, slowly began to reveal patterns of recovery. Cities that had been abandoned or partially destroyed were reclaimed and reimagined, often incorporating alien technologies or architectural principles that humans had gleaned through careful study. Structures that once relied solely on steel and concrete now integrated advanced materials capable of withstanding extreme forces, and energy systems adapted from alien designs provided sustainable power in ways previously unimaginable. Humanity's physical environment became a living record of adaptation, innovation, and resilience, a testament to the species' ability to integrate lessons from catastrophe into constructive progress. Beyond the physical, the psychological and cultural evolution of humanity was profound. Societies that survived the occupation carried forward a collective consciousness deeply shaped by the experience of confrontation with superior intelligence. Philosophical and spiritual frameworks evolved to incorporate the reality of extraterrestrial life, emphasizing humility, cooperation, and an expanded sense of interconnectedness. Humans recognized the importance of perspective. The Earth was no longer merely a home to their own species, but part of a larger, dynamic cosmos inhabited by intelligences with motives, technologies, and histories far beyond human comprehension. This awareness fostered a cautious optimism, encouraging exploration, diplomacy, and preparation for the eventual possibility of contact that was neither hostile nor catastrophic. Children born during and after the occupation inherited not only the physical remnants of alien technology, but also the cultural memory of survival and resistance. Education was transformed. Students learned to navigate both human and alien-derived systems, combining empirical science with strategic thinking, problem-solving under uncertainty, and adaptive creativity. Communities emphasized resilience over rigidity, teaching flexibility, collaboration, and critical thinking as essential survival skills. Art, literature, and media reflected a synthesis of human experience and the incomprehensible elements of the alien presence, producing narratives rich with metaphor, symbolism, and philosophical inquiry. Through these cultural developments, humanity cultivated a worldview that embraced uncertainty as a source of growth rather than a cause for fear. Environmental stewardship became a central focus of post-invasion society. The disruption caused by alien occupation had revealed both the fragility and resilience of Earth's ecosystems. Humans learned to anticipate ecological consequences of technological and societal actions, integrating lessons from the alien manipulation of climate, energy, and resources. Agricultural systems became more diverse and robust. Water management strategies relied on adaptive networks rather than centralized infrastructure, and energy harvesting was decentralized and resilient. The Earth itself became a collaborator in human survival, its systems studied, respected, and incorporated into long-term planning. Humanity began to view itself as part of a planetary system, not merely its dominant species, fostering a sense of responsibility that extended beyond immediate survival toward sustainability and balance. Technological integration continued to define the trajectory of human civilization. Knowledge derived from alien systems enabled the development of advanced propulsion technologies, energy storage methods, and materials science innovations. Humans experimented with hybridized systems, combining alien engineering principles with human ingenuity to create tools capable of exploration, construction, and defense previously thought impossible. These innovations were not merely pragmatic, they were transformative, catalyzing a renaissance of creativity, problem-solving, and cross-disciplinary collaboration. Humanity emerged as both a survivor and a learner, capable of understanding and utilizing knowledge that had once been entirely inaccessible. Despite these advancements, the memory of the invasion remained a guiding influence. Societies institutionalized vigilance, creating structures and educational programs designed to prevent complacency, encourage strategic foresight, and cultivate global awareness. Simultaneously, humanity embraced the symbolic lessons of the ordeal, that intelligence, adaptability, and cooperation were paramount, and that resilience was measured not only by survival but by the capacity to integrate adversity into growth. The alien presence, while no longer an immediate threat, served as both a reminder and a teacher, highlighting the limitations and potentials inherent in human civilization. Over time, humanity began to envision a future in which the cosmos itself became a stage for exploration and engagement. Lessons learned from the invasion informed interstellar planning, preparation for potential contact, and philosophical frameworks that emphasized observation, humility, and ethical responsibility. The Earth became both laboratory and sanctuary, a place where humans refined strategies, tested technologies, and cultivated resilience. Humanity's narrative transformed from one of passive survival to one of active preparation, philosophical reflection, and intergenerational stewardship. The experience of invasion became a catalyst, shaping the species' identity and laying the foundations for a future that balanced ambition with caution, creativity with wisdom, and action with reflection. In the quiet moments of reflection, individuals imagined the alien world not only as an adversary but as a mirror, revealing the latent capacities within themselves and their species. The inner lessons of perseverance, ingenuity, and adaptability became as tangible as the technological artifacts recovered and studied. In dreams and meditations, people envisioned a symbolic inner sun, illuminating both the depths of human consciousness and the unseen potentials of the planet itself. The narrative of invasion, once dominated by fear and chaos, gradually transformed into a story of enlightenment, a recognition that the challenges imposed by superior forces had unlocked capacities for collaboration, understanding, and creative adaptation that had lain dormant until tested by extraordinary circumstances. Ultimately, the aftermath of the alien invasion illustrates the profound interplay between external forces and internal growth. Humanity emerged not merely as a survivor, but as a civilization fundamentally transformed, capable of integrating knowledge, adapting to unprecedented conditions, and reflecting deeply on its own nature and place in the universe. The Earth itself, scarred yet resilient, became a testament to the endurance of life and the possibilities of renewal. And as generations passed, the story of resistance, adaptation, and transformation evolved into a living myth, a guiding narrative for a species forever aware that the universe holds both challenges and opportunities far beyond the immediate visible world. In this light, the invasion becomes not only a tale of conflict, but a meditation on the capacity for intelligence, cooperation, and resilience to transcend adversity, illuminating a path toward a future where humanity, shaped by the extraordinary, can flourish in ways once inconceivable. As humanity rebuilt after the catastrophic invasion, subtle anomalies began to emerge, patterns that did not fit the official narratives, and that suggested a deeper layer of reality had remained hidden throughout the ordeal. Survivors in isolated enclaves whispered of sightings long before the confirmed arrival of alien forces, reports that had been systematically dismissed or erased by governments. Entire archives were lost, redacted, or reinterpreted. Witnesses disappeared quietly, leaving only fragmented accounts. Some researchers who had attempted to catalog these early signals found their work mysteriously censored, their laboratories compromised, or their funding silently withdrawn. Gradually, an unsettling picture began to emerge. The invasion, while dramatic and undeniable, may have been only one phase of a much larger plan, one orchestrated in shadows, with knowledge suppressed from the global population until it reached a tipping point that could no longer be concealed. Analysts began to consider the implications of an organized cover-up spanning decades, even centuries. Was it possible that governments and private organizations had prior knowledge of extraterrestrial capabilities and had been quietly preparing, not to prevent an invasion, but to channel it in ways that ensured certain outcomes? Leaked documents, partial satellite imagery, and whistleblower testimonies hinted at secret space programs, experimental propulsion projects, and clandestine communication with non-human intelligences long before the arrival of the first confirmed alien craft. The timing of the invasion, the precision of extraterrestrial strikes, and the prior evacuation of some sensitive sites all suggested coordination, or, at the very least, an understanding of alien behavior that far exceeded public knowledge. Could it be that humanity had been manipulated into a controlled experiment, its survival tested under extreme conditions to shape the species' future trajectory? Patterns in global events before and during the invasion fueled further speculation. Unexplained disappearances, mysterious energy surges, and sudden technological breakthroughs now seemed less coincidental. Some theorists proposed that alien reconnaissance had occurred over decades, perhaps centuries, carefully cataloging human progress and weaknesses, while select human authorities had known and subtly guided responses to shape the planet's societal and technological development. Historical anomalies, ancient structures, unexplained astronomical alignments, and myths of gods or celestial visitors were reevaluated as potential evidence of prior contact or even ongoing observation. These coincidences suggested not random chaos, but deliberate orchestration on a temporal scale beyond ordinary human comprehension, challenging assumptions about free will, history, and the nature of reality itself. In the underground, independent researchers pieced together a mosaic of unsettling possibilities. Advanced alien energy signatures, documented yet dismissed as natural phenomena, appeared to trace patterns across the globe. Some proposed that alien presence had been influencing planetary energy systems, subtly guiding tectonic and atmospheric conditions to prepare the planet for occupation. These manipulations, largely invisible to mainstream observation, hinted at a level of planetary engineering that surpassed any human technology and implied strategic foresight spanning millennia. Were natural disasters, climate fluctuations, or even global conflicts subtly induced as part of a larger interstellar plan? The implications were staggering. Humanity's history itself may have been entwined with forces beyond its awareness, and the invasion was merely the overt phase of an operation executed in silence and shadow. Speculative theories extended even further, suggesting that certain humans may have been collaborators or intermediaries, intentionally placed to mediate or mitigate alien objectives. Some claim that technological elites, secretive scientific groups, or clandestine political networks had entered agreements, knowingly or unknowingly, with extraterrestrial entities. In return for survival, selective access to alien knowledge, or protection of strategic assets, these human agents may have shaped responses, guided narratives, and maintained the illusion of unpreparedness. Historical patterns of technological acceleration, sudden social upheavals, and mysterious disappearances gained new, unsettling significance when interpreted through this lens. It was as if humanity had been participants in a grand experiment, its collective trajectory nudged and observed, with true understanding accessible only to those operating behind the scenes. This theory also proposed that remnants of alien influence persisted even after the overt invasion ended. Subtle manipulations of human thought, communication, and technology could continue, invisible to the majority yet profoundly shaping societal evolution. Global crises, technological leaps, and cultural shifts were no longer random or purely human-driven. They became potential signals of an ongoing plan, testing adaptability, resilience, and cooperation. Certain locations, once battlefields, now abandoned zones or highly secure research facilities, were speculated to harbor artifacts of alien origin, either inert or subtly interactive, awaiting rediscovery or further activation. The idea that humanity was navigating a carefully constructed environment, where apparent accidents, coincidences, and disasters served as instruments of education or control, challenged every conventional assumption about autonomy and history. Philosophically, this perspective cast the invasion as a lens through which the species could examine itself. Survival was no longer purely a function of strength or ingenuity. It was a measure of awareness, perception, and the capacity to interpret signals hidden within apparent randomness. The human mind became both the battlefield and the laboratory, testing not only tactical skills but the ability to discern patterns, decode intentions, and make decisions under extreme uncertainty. In this framework, the extraterrestrial presence was not merely a threat but a catalyst, forcing the species to confront limitations, rethink priorities, and develop strategies that transcended immediate survival, reaching toward long-term evolution and consciousness. As whispers of this hidden narrative spread, small groups of humans dedicated themselves to uncovering and documenting these anomalies. Networks of independent scholars, hackers, and explorers worked to map potential alien influences, recover lost technologies, and interpret enigmatic signals from both space and terrestrial sources. These groups became repositories of knowledge previously inaccessible to the wider population, operating quietly to safeguard humanity's potential, prepare for future interactions, and question the reality presented by mainstream sources. Even in isolation, these efforts fostered a sense of purpose, hope, and the belief that the human species, despite centuries of manipulation and oversight, retained the capacity to regain agency and influence its own destiny. In the speculative shadows of this theory, the invasion was recontextualized not as an ending but as a beginning, a deliberate stage in a far-reaching experiment whose ultimate objectives remained hidden from the majority. Humanity, scarred yet resilient, was both observer and participant, tested in every domain of survival, physically, psychologically, socially, and technologically. Each discovery, each reverse-engineered device, each recovered pattern became a fragment of a larger puzzle, hinting at a universe far more intricate, interconnected, and purposeful than previously imagined. The possibility that events had been orchestrated over centuries introduced an unsettling duality. The world was at once a familiar place of daily life and an incomprehensibly vast stage, where human decisions, survival, and evolution were observed, guided, and perhaps subtly influenced by forces beyond current perception. And so humanity moved forward, aware that even as the overt invasion had ended, the unseen experiment continued. Every technological breakthrough, social reorganization, and scientific advancement became part of a hidden dialogue with forces that had long operated in shadows. The Earth itself, resilient and adaptive, mirrored the human species. Both had endured manipulation, disruption, and extreme challenges, yet both continued to evolve, adapt, and prepare. The ultimate lesson of this extended narrative was neither defeat nor triumph, but an understanding that intelligence, resilience, and curiosity remain humanity's most profound tools, capable of navigating mysteries, surviving manipulation, and illuminating truths concealed in plain sight. In the end, the invasion transformed from a story of fear into a perpetual, unfolding experiment in observation, adaptation, and consciousness, leaving humanity both humbled and empowered, forever alert to the possibility that the world is far stranger than it appears. In the decades following the apparent cessation of alien hostilities, a subtle, almost imperceptible layer of unease settled over human civilization. While the overt destruction had ended and the physical scars of the invasion were gradually repaired, anomalies persisted: strange energy readings, unexplained orbital trajectories, missing time reports, and irregular communication signals that defied conventional physics. These anomalies were sporadic at first, dismissed as errors or natural phenomena, but over time patterns began to emerge that suggested a hidden narrative was still unfolding just beyond human perception. Independent researchers, often working in isolation or in secretive networks, began to trace these patterns, linking them to both historical events and contemporary occurrences in ways that challenged conventional chronology and causality. The possibility emerged that the invasion had never been a singular event, but a node in a far larger, long-term plan whose parameters were largely concealed from humanity. This hypothesis posited that extraterrestrial entities had been monitoring the planet for centuries, possibly millennia, quietly influencing the trajectory of human civilization. Archaeological enigmas, unexplained technological leaps, and recurring motifs in mythology and religious texts were reevaluated as potential evidence of subtle extraterrestrial guidance or interference. The construction of megalithic sites, the alignment of ancient observatories with cosmic events, and reports of strange aerial phenomena across different eras were reinterpreted not as random coincidences, but as strands of an ongoing interaction designed to steer human development in ways that remained invisible to the majority of the population. These interpretations, while speculative, were supported by cross-disciplinary correlations, anomalies in energy signatures, historical accounts of unexplained phenomena, and previously classified documents revealing clandestine government programs. Within the clandestine human response, certain secret societies, intelligence agencies, and independent research collectives were suspected of having advanced awareness of extraterrestrial capabilities long before the invasion became visible. These groups reportedly engaged in covert space programs, experimental physics projects, and advanced aerospace engineering, with goals that ranged from early detection of alien arrival to potential negotiation, control, or integration of alien knowledge. Leaked communications and whistleblower testimonies suggested that some factions may have deliberately withheld critical information from the global population, creating a controlled framework within which the invasion would unfold. This scenario implied a complex moral and strategic calculus: survival, access to alien technology, and the preservation of elite interests may have taken precedence over transparent protection of the general population. The ethical implications of such clandestine preparation, decisions made in shadows that affected billions, added a profound layer of philosophical and psychological tension to humanity's narrative. The persistent observation of extraterrestrial forces did not cease with their overt withdrawal. Subtle influences continued in the form of energy anomalies, shifts in orbital mechanics, and unexplained patterns in human behavior. Researchers documented instances where infrastructure, communication networks, and even natural phenomena seemed to align in ways that facilitated or obstructed human development. Some theorists proposed that these influences functioned as a testing ground, a kind of cosmic experiment designed to measure human adaptability, resilience, and creativity under conditions of uncertainty and constraint. The planet became a laboratory, and humanity both subject and participant, navigating a reality in which apparent randomness masked deliberate orchestration. These theories suggested a universe in which intelligence was distributed asymmetrically, capable of manipulating events on temporal and spatial scales beyond conventional comprehension, and where humans were engaged in an iterative, multi-generational dialogue with forces beyond immediate perception. Technological evolution accelerated dramatically during this period. Reverse-engineered alien devices, partially functional drones, and salvaged energy systems provided the foundation for unprecedented innovation. Energy sources once confined to theoretical physics became operational, offering sustainable power for communities previously isolated from conventional grids. Materials engineering advanced to the point where structures could withstand extraordinary forces, including gravitational manipulation, extreme temperatures, and electromagnetic interference. Humans began to experiment with propulsion systems inspired by alien technology, theoretical faster-than-light travel concepts, and adaptive defensive systems. These advancements, however, were not purely technical. They were intertwined with philosophical inquiry. Humanity recognized that mastery over such technology required understanding not just its mechanics, but the strategic, ethical, and psychological principles underlying its use. The boundary between science and philosophy blurred, as knowledge itself became a form of survival and power. Social structures transformed in parallel with technological evolution. Centralized authority was often replaced by decentralized, networked communities capable of rapid decision-making and resource redistribution. Traditional hierarchies proved vulnerable to disruption, while flexible, adaptive structures thrived. Education emphasized critical thinking, problem-solving under extreme uncertainty, and strategic collaboration across disciplines. Cultural memory, oral histories, and hidden archives were safeguarded, providing continuity and cohesion amid persistent uncertainty. Humanity learned to navigate an environment where knowledge, perception, and adaptation were as crucial as physical survival. Philosophically, the prolonged post-invasion period fostered new paradigms of consciousness. Humans began to conceptualize intelligence not solely as a personal or collective human attribute, but as a distributed phenomenon, observable in both alien forces and planetary systems themselves. Patterns of energy, environmental feedback loops, and complex networks of interaction were interpreted as forms of intelligence or agency, suggesting that the universe itself possessed qualities akin to deliberate thought or design. Within this framework, human cognition evolved to detect subtle signals, recognize hidden patterns, and integrate multi-layered information streams, skills that became essential for both survival and societal evolution. The boundaries between reality and speculation became increasingly permeable. People reported experiences that could not be explained by conventional physics or psychology. visions of vast interstellar architectures, encounters with phenomena that defied causality, and perception of time as nonlinear. While many accounts were anecdotal, patterns emerged that suggested either a shared consciousness phenomenon or intentional manipulation by forces operating at scales beyond human comprehension. These experiences, though unsettling, were integrated into the cultural narrative, producing art, literature, and philosophy that explored the interplay between human perception, cosmic forces, and the long-term consequences of extraterrestrial interaction. By the early centuries following the invasion, humanity had effectively become a hybrid civilization, technologically advanced, culturally adaptive, and philosophically enriched by its extraordinary experiences. Yet the awareness persisted that the planet remained under subtle observation. Energy fluctuations, orbital patterns, and unexplained anomalies served as constant reminders that the cosmos was not inert, and that human survival was contingent upon both ingenuity and perception. Entire generations were educated with the understanding that the world was a layered construct: physical, social, technological, and energetic. Humans learned to navigate each layer simultaneously, to interpret signals within signals, and to prepare for contingencies that transcended ordinary comprehension. The final realization, perhaps the most profound, was that humanity had been fundamentally transformed by the intersection of invasion, survival, and covert orchestration. The species now possessed capabilities, insights, and resilience that were unimaginable prior to the ordeal. Yet these gains were inseparable from the awareness of manipulation, observation, and the vast unknown. Humans had survived, adapted, and evolved, but the universe had revealed itself as a place of layered realities, interstellar intelligence, and forces operating on scales that dwarfed individual comprehension. In this context, every technological breakthrough, social innovation, and philosophical insight became simultaneously a tool of survival and a measure of understanding, a way to engage with the hidden architecture of reality itself. Even now, the story continues. Humanity, scarred and enlightened, moves forward with both caution and curiosity, aware that the visible world is only a fraction of what exists, and that survival depends on the capacity to perceive, interpret, and act across multiple dimensions of reality. Every anomaly, every coincidence, every whisper of energy or signal is potentially a fragment of a larger puzzle, one whose full picture may never be fully comprehended, yet whose partial understanding is essential for survival, adaptation, and evolution. In this enduring narrative, the invasion is no longer merely an event of destruction. It is a catalyst for perpetual learning, a lens through which humanity measures its own intelligence, resilience, and potential. The story of the alien presence and its hidden machinations becomes a living, evolving myth, a reflection of humanity's capacity to endure, to comprehend, and ultimately to transcend the apparent limits of its own existence. As the centuries passed, humanity settled into a new rhythm, forever transformed by the extraordinary events that had unfolded. The invasion had left indelible marks, not only on cities and landscapes, but on the collective consciousness of the species. People no longer viewed the world solely through the lens of human experience. The universe had revealed itself as vast, complex, and layered with intelligences and forces beyond immediate comprehension. The lessons learned from survival, adaptation, and resistance became embedded in culture, education, and philosophy. Humanity understood that vigilance, curiosity, and resilience were no longer optional; they were essential. Generations grew up in a world where knowledge of alien technology and strategies of survival were part of everyday life. Children explored ruins that had once been battlegrounds, studied energy systems derived from extraterrestrial craft, and debated the philosophical implications of intelligence beyond Earth. Art, literature, and music reflected both fear and awe, blending human creativity with the enigmatic legacy of alien presence. The Earth itself, scarred but resilient, became a living archive of history, a canvas upon which humanity painted its triumphs and lessons learned. Yet even in this era of recovery and understanding, the subtle reminders of unseen forces remained. Strange anomalies persisted, orbital fluctuations, unexplained energy patterns, signals that seemed almost deliberate. Some scholars whispered of a continuing experiment, a quiet observation designed to guide or test the species in ways yet unfathomable. But humanity had evolved. No longer passive observers of cosmic forces, people had become active participants, capable of interpreting signs, adapting to extreme conditions, and wielding knowledge as both shield and tool. In the end, the invasion, the conspiracies, and the mysteries of the universe became intertwined into a single narrative of resilience, intelligence, and transformation. Humanity survived not merely through strength or technology, but through adaptability, cooperation, and the capacity to integrate chaos into understanding. The story closed not with fear but with awakening, a recognition that the universe is vast, the unknown is infinite, and that the human spirit, tempered by adversity, is capable of enduring, learning, and flourishing, no matter the challenges that lie beyond the stars.